What's up, YouTube? Okay, so this is our last podcast of this quarter. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, that makes me so sad. Okay, anyways, so this is season 3, episode 9. Sometime when everything has changed. Something like that. That's the title, I think. Yeah, sometime when everything has changed. I really like that title. That's a really interesting title. Anyways, so like the last episode, this podcast follows through Joshua, a young man who cooperated with the authorities against a gang but ended up cycling through the juvenile detention and then eventually the adult system. So in this episode, the state of Ohio decides to transfer Joshua from juvenile custody to adult prison after a series of disciplinary incidents. Joshua ultimately accepts a plea deal and then receives a sentence that will keep him in adult prison for years. I really think it's interesting that Joshua views the adult system as like better than the juvenile system in a way. I think that's really interesting. But my key takeaways from this episode is that the justice system really does cause a huge change in a person's identity. Like, that's one of the most striking parts, I think, of Joshua's story is how deeply the system really does shape him. When he first enters the system, he still has the hopes and expectations about fairness and opportunity, and over time, with constant exposure to detention, violence, and punishment, it really shows you how he changes, how he sees himself and the world. And I think that's just really interesting because, it's like you come in and you're like, you still have that belief that the system's gonna treat you fairly. I'm sorry, I don't like the light glaring. There we go. Like, you still have the belief that the system's gonna treat you fairly, and then you go through it, and then you realize that that just doesn't, and not everything works out like that. I just, I can't. Like, I feel so much for Joshua. Like, he just, yeah. Okay. I also think another good takeaway is that good intentions do not always lead to good outcomes in a way. Like, Joshua cooperated with law enforcement with the belief that it was going to help him, and instead he found himself in the loop that offered very little protection and very little rewards. The loop being the system. But, yeah. I guess another thing is that people can really just become accustomed to unfairness like that. I mean, like, I get it. Like, I get how easy it is to become accustomed to unfairness. Like, I feel like everybody has been accustomed to certain situations, but by the end of Joshua's journey, he adapts to the conditions that many outsiders would consider really unacceptable. And this adaptation is probably one of like the biggest meanings of this episode's title, is how he adapts to this unfairness and treatment. And it just I feel so much for Joshua. I think Joshua's story shows so much how a young person's future can be influenced by decisions that are made by judges, prosecutors, and correctional officers, and policies that might seem routine. And like, it just has me wondering, like, is the criminal justice system primarily designed for punishment, rehabilitation, or public safety? Because we say that with youth we want to work in restorative justice and rehabilitation and like all that stuff, but it just kind of, from what we've seen historically, it just feels like it's punishment over and over again. So it's like, what really are we working towards, and how do we like work towards having a system that is going to help young people who commit crimes like this? Yeah, I think these episodes have been so great, and I'll miss this class, I'll miss these discussions, but yeah, I love you guys. Bye.